Hello and welcome to Questions That Matter, where we discuss the interesting and important work done at TrustBridge. Today we have with us Natasha Aggarwal, who has been following the work and the debate on finfluencers in India's retail financial markets. SEBI has been worrying about finfluencers for a long time in terms of how these affect consumer decisions and what ends up happening for consumer money, where people end up investing, and the implications of this on household portfolios and consumer finances. For this, this debate has been going on for a long time, and SEBI recently put out a draft proposal for how to regulate finfluencers. Whenever a regulator puts out a proposal, there are two questions. One is what is in the regulation, and the second is the manner in which the regulation was proposed. So today, Natasha is going to talk to us a little bit about the latter, which is the manner in which the regulation was proposed and what implications that might have on questions of regulatory governance. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about what is going on with this finfluencers debate and what happened.
Yeah, sure. So before that, should we just talk a little bit about who finfluencers are?
Yes, of course.
Because I think that this is a term that's been emerging more and more, and SEBI is becoming more and more interested in it. In fact, most recently, they issued a show cause notice to Asmita Patel for being a finfluencer. So it's basically somebody who provides investment advice or promises financial returns in lieu of consideration, of course. And why is SEBI concerned? Because they think that retail investors or ordinary investors will get duped and will fall for financial scams and will lose money. And this concern first started showing up in SEBI's board meetings in June 2024, so last year, where they talked about making amendments to certain regulations to restrict the manner in which intermediaries, depositories, and stock exchanges, clearing corporations communicate or work with digital platforms. And what they have said now is that you can only directly or indirectly associate with a specified digital platform. What is a specified digital platform? It's a platform that complies with certain measures that SEBI has set out. They've clarified that intermediaries can associate with ones that are not registered, digital platforms that are not registered, but then the compliance burden is higher. The issue that I have with the way SEBI is trying to regulate finfluencers is that they are introducing new compliance requirements through a circular and not through regulations, which would have been in accordance with the parent legislation, that's the SEBI Act.
So let's unpack this a little bit, right? The first is whenever you say digital platforms and specified digital platforms, the question is, you typically don't think of digital platforms as a SEBI regulated entity.
Right.
So the first question is can SEBI even do this? Is it outside its jurisdiction to regulate digital platforms, or does it have the leeway within its regulatory framework to be able to do this?
Arguably, it does have that leeway. SEBI has been given very wide powers under the SEBI Act, which is its parent legislation, and it says that SEBI can undertake any measures for certain purposes. It's a non-exhaustive list of purposes, and I think because there's this concern about retail investors falling for financial scams, there is some sense that SEBI can do this, and it is within its jurisdiction. It of course conflicts with something that have been issued by ministries of broadcasting and information and technology, but arguably it's still within the scope of SEBI's powers.
And you've written a lot about this in that op-ed that you wrote in Money Control. And then the question is, if it is within its powers to do this, what it doesn't make, I mean, it seems a little odd that it had to use a circular to do this. And so you write about this in your op-ed as well. So can you tell us a little bit about what you were thinking on this particular aspect?
Yeah, sure. So, before I get into my major issue with how SEBI tried to regulate influencers, just a little bit of context. So, SEBI as a regulator has quasi-legislative, quasi-executive, and quasi-judicial powers. And basically, what that means is that SEBI can publish regulations, or they can make regulations. SEBI can conduct investigations, and it can take enforcement actions. And because of the sort of mix of powers that SEBI has, it challenges our traditional idea of separation of powers. And in order to have some form of accountability for regulators like SEBI, their parent legislations often set out how they can make law. So there are some sort of guardrails on its quasi-legislative powers. Now, what the SEBI Act says is that they can issue regulations. And what that would mean is that, they would have a draft set of regulations that would be laid before Parliament. And that's the guardrail in place. That is what, in some manner, ensures accountability of SEBI. But a circular is not the same as publishing regulations. Circulars are supposed to just be clarificatory, and circulars don't have to be laid before Parliament. So there is a fundamental distinction between those two regulatory instruments. And what SEBI tried to do is introduce a set of compliance requirements, what they're calling preventative and curative mechanisms for these specified digital platforms. And it's an entirely new list of compliance requirements. So it's obvious that these are not clarificatory in nature,
Right.
and shouldn't have been done through a circular.
Right. And so what should SEBI have done? Because, I sympathize with the problem of influencers where there is a lot of stuff going on. Of course, one view of the world is that you do nothing about it. And over time, people will learn to, figure out what's right and what's wrong and what's good for them and not. But on the other hand, I can see the pressure on the regulator to do something about it. So again, staying away from what it should have done, because today we are focusing on the how. How do you think SEBI should have approached this issue?
The good thing is that they did issue a draft consultation paper. They invited comments, and that's great. But they shouldn't have done this through a circular. It's what is sometimes known as disguised legislation. So it's pretending to be legislation, but it's not. And they should have done this through a set of regulations that invited public comments, incorporated those comments, had perhaps a cost-benefit analysis of the impact of what they're trying to do, and then laid before Parliament. So those are important processes for accountability.
Well, let's hope that SEBI is reading your op-eds.
I hope so.
And that we start taking the process of regulation making a little bit more seriously than we do right now in India. Thank you, Natasha, for your time.
Thank you.
And for those of you who want to know a little bit more about this particular issue and about disguised legislation in general, please look up Natasha's op-ed. The link is described below. And please look up our website for more material on these issues. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.